Now this is going to be quite a simple Suffolk landscape, trees, fields and a nice gentle light sky. Now I'll just draw out a few lines to indicate the main placement of things, this is the edge of this field, just exaggerating some of the curves. There's a little bank here, and then we've got this large oak tree, and the main purpose of all of this is really just to indicate how large it is and the placement on the painting. Some distant trees here, I'm going to ignore anything that I don't feel contributes or makes things complicated. I just want a simple corner of a field, little distant hedges there on that field, and exaggerate the greens. Tiny little bit of hedge here, that'll bring that in a bit from the right hand side to block that off. So nice sort of shadow across that bank and a pencil thin shadow there, and the foreground is deep in the shadow. I've got a little shadow and light sparkling through the trees behind me, but I'll just have to put up with that. Top up with some water ready for painting. Sort out the brushes I'm going to use. Although I've brought a lot of brushes, probably use only a few of them. Most of them are Chinese calligraphy brushes, which I quite like. A big one for the sky. Now I always prime my palette before I leave home, so it's full of nice soft paint. So all I've got to do is open the paint box and I can begin. Now this sort of subject probably requires me to do the sky first. There's a blue cobalt sky with some light fluffy clouds. Nothing too dramatic, and in fact very often this type of soft Suffolk sky, East Anglian sky, can be more tricky to do than something more dramatic. Right, we'll start with the sky. I always paint on dry paper with the skies because there's a fair amount of definition and drawing in skies. This is pure cobalt, and I like to mix the colour up as I go along. That way I can keep a tab on how much moisture there is on the brush. I start at the top and work steadily down. So right across here. Make sure that you cover this blue, a little bit more water to lighten it as we come down. And there's a subtle change in colour, gets a little bit warmer, so I put a little bit of alizarin with the cobalt. And then it really gets quite light, sort of dry brush that, and then we can introduce, let's have a bit of cadmium red, oh that's rather a lot, and some raw sienna, just for the, and plenty of water for these very light clouds. I want to keep them nice and warm. with all this direct sunlight, the light is going to be fairly warm. Now this is a little bit of cobalt violet and cerulean blue and a bit of raw umber, just to give it a little bit of body, to put some tiny bit more cerulean in that, just to indicate the shadow underneath the clouds. Remember, the shaded side of the clouds should reflect the direction of the sun. I also go straight over all of the trees, because behind the trees there's the sky, and then broad horizontal strokes right across where the sky meets the land. Then working down, this is some raw sienna, a little bit of alizarin crimson, just to warm it up a bit, to get the light areas on this bank here. Now let's have a little bit of viridian and raw sienna. Keep it nice and light. A little bit of aureolin. Keep changing that to vary it a bit, and then a little bit of burnt sienna and viridian to darken that corner there. That's darker there, and darker here as well. The sky's not dry yet, but that doesn't matter. Don't worry about, I think a lot of amateurs worry about technique and the order in which they paint things, and don't get obsessed with that. Somebody very perceptively remarked, I think it was about Edward Hopper, that if he'd have been a better painter, he wouldn't have been such a good artist. So think of that. Don't worry about the way you paint it. Worry about how you're going to express or render what's in front of you to get the flavour of the day. Right, well, we'll just leave that to dry, and then in the second part we'll tackle some of these larger areas, and work in a traditional way from the background to the foreground. I don't believe in following procedures like that for the whole painting, but in this particular case it might be appropriate. Okay, so we'll stop there and I'll carry on with this after it's dried in the second part.